Germany is gripped by election fever, while far-right AfD tries to mobilize its voters with the idea of so-called remigration. The ruling SPD assures Ukraine of its unwavering support by the Defense Minister Boris Pistorius paying an unexpected visit to Kyiv. And to talk about the recent developments in Germany's election campaign, we're joined by political scientist Professor Daniela Schwarzer, Executive Board Member at Bertelsmann Stiftung. Good evening.
Good evening.
Let's start with Baltic policy, as today leaders of NATO countries that share the Baltic shore met in Helsinki to discuss patrolling the Baltic Sea. So how important is safety of Baltic Sea infrastructure to Germany?
Well, obviously, Germany is a country that borders the Baltic Sea and sees, of course, that hybrid attacks are happening right now almost by the day. And so in terms of energy provisions, in terms of telecommunications and other linkages through the Baltic Sea, Germany is affected and considers Baltic Sea security as something that is very important. And I think the news, of the past days or the first days of this year only prove this point, that it is of huge importance that the neighbors bordering the Baltic Sea, such as Germany, Poland, the Baltic states, and also Scandinavian countries, that we all together step up efforts to protect infrastructure that runs through the Baltic Sea.
Today, Defense Minister Boris Pistorius paid an unexpected visit to Kyiv. Now, do you think this visit will rather boost SPD's support or have an adverse effect on it?
I think that for the next weeks ahead, until the general elections, the SPD position on Ukraine will remain very stable. The Chancellor also reiterated, and as did our Defense Minister Boris Pistorius, that Germany stands by its commitments. He also said something that goes beyond the elections, and that is that Germany stays committed to Ukraine even after the general elections. That is because also the Christian Democrats, who are currently running first and will probably be the party that provides the next chancellor, they also have a firm commitment to supporting Ukraine. So the position is very clear. Voters in Germany are also pretty stable with regards to the question, should Germany continue to support Ukraine militarily and financially? There has been support since the beginning of the war, but we also, in the electoral campaign in particular, have strong voices from the far left and the far right who propagate the idea that there is an easy solution and end to the war, and that there could be negotiations that would actually lead to peace. As far as I see the German debate evolving, there's a lot of realism with regards to Russia and Putin's goals in that war. And I personally perceive a low, if not absent readiness on the Russian side to even go into negotiations. So this debate plays a role in the German electoral campaign, but I do not think that the visit to Ukraine will particularly move voters into one or the other direction. However, it is more complicated now for the governing parties and the future government, given that we have this opposition from the far left and the far left right to Ukraine support, to uphold the story. But currently they still do, and I don't think that will change before election day.
Maybe higher taxes to pay for NATO protection will move German voters. Chancellor Olaf Scholz has already stated that Germany cannot afford to pay 5% of GDP, as it would effectively lower the pensions and affect everyday lives of German citizens. Now, could the next ruling party, hypothetically, given that it will be Christian Democrats, could they change this approach?
Well, I think the debate in Germany has moved in terms of assessing what we need to spend for security and defense. Right now, Germany has reached the 2% of GDP NATO goal for the first time since last year. And the promise goes back years in time, after the annexation of Crimea in 2014, when NATO then committed to reaching the goal of 2% of GDP per country. So this took a long time. Germany's there. Now comes Donald Trump with that idea that 5% shall be spent. So I take the response by Olaf Scholz as a necessary response, given the electoral campaign, that this number is not a given. However, we need to have a far more serious debate, and that is the question on what do we need to spend and how do we need to spend. And I believe that after the elections, when the new government is formed, there will be a very important conversation to be had, not only within Germany, so how much do we need to invest in our own security and defense, but also how, as Europeans organized in the European Union, but also how, as Europeans within NATO, do we better team up to spend, yes, more than we currently do, but also spend better. And there I see, if I look at what the Christian Democrats have said, who will likely be the strongest party after the next general elections and will provide the chancellor, there is a likelihood that this debate will move forward. But it's more important, I think, to discuss what we actually need to do and how we spend the money in the most intelligent way, enhancing European cooperations and synergies that we need to lift in terms of cooperating better among Europeans as part of NATO. They're now focusing on the question, is 3 the right number, or 4% the right number, or 5%? So I think there will be movement in the discussion.
Professor, you said that support for Ukraine is keeping the same levels among various groups of voters. Now, I'd like to reverse the question. One of the parties that would like to stop any help for Ukraine is obviously AfD. Now, last weekend, AfD presented its ideas, including resuming gas contracts with Russia. Now, is this pro-Russian agenda helping it gather more votes at this stage of the campaign?
Well, it's part of a mix. AfD campaigns on many issues, and this pro-Russian stance and the promises that a good deal can be made with Russia over Ukraine, but also over gas deliveries, that is only part of a bigger mix. The party campaigns mainly on migration issues, the idea of sending home immigrants very easily, as you have already mentioned, that is also very present, and they push this issue in a very strong way. Then there's the Ukraine-Russia issue, and then there is, of course, an economic agenda, speaking to the concerns and fears of the people. The problem is not so much whether the AfD positions on Russia will help it to attract more voters, but it actually, beyond AfD, it changes the tone in the debate, because what the far right does is create an illusion that there can be an easy fix to Russia's war in Ukraine and that there can be a stable negotiated deal.
Professor, lastly, in one sentence, yes. I'd like to ask you one more thing. Will AfD be part of the next government in Germany? Absolutely not, or maybe we'll see.
I don't think so. All parties that are likely to shape the government have clearly said that they are not willing to work with AfD on the federal level, and that position is very firm. However, we may see a scenario where AfD could be the largest opposition party if the other largest parties have to form a government together. If a two-party coalition is not enough, as a consequence, AfD could be the largest opposition party, which it already was once, but that gives it, of course, also a stronger role in parliament, in chairing committees and having other roles. So in any case, it is likely that AfD will be heard more after the next federal elections, but the moderate parties, the pro-European, pro-democratic parties, stand very firm with their commitment not to work with AfD in government.
Having said that, we should also remember about what happened in Austria not that long ago. Professor Daniela Schwarzer, Executive Board Member at Bertelsmann Stiftung, was our guest this evening. Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching, and stay with us for more here on TVP World.